Well, welcome to Active Love Adoptions podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and this is Dave and David Schunk, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I'm not butchering it. That's good.
Oh, you got it.
And do you prefer to go by Dave or David?
Either one, but
Either
because
one.
I
Okay.
because I work in IT, that everyone always jokes that there's always a Dave in IT, so it kind of just sticks at this point.
I know. Well, I have I don't like to be called Jess. I don't
Yeah,
know what it is about it, but I'm like, you just call me Jessica, my full name, because that's what was given to me. I think it's because my mom had a weird aversion to the nickname Jess. So uh, I
go
got
by
that too.
Jessica. Yeah.
Yes. But I have people still who are like, no, it's Jess. I can't call you anything else. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I guess it is what it is. So, okay. So I know that we have talked about your story, but let's jump back into that and tell us just from the beginning of how the adoption happened. And yeah, just go ahead and jump in and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I was adopted in '96. I was born in '94 over in Smolensk, Russia. It's on the west side of Russia. The story started how basically the story started. My birth mom had me. She was young, about 16, I think, 16, 17 years old. And the father took off, wasn't in the picture. And this was shortly after, the Soviet Union collapsed in '91. So about 3 years later, I came along. The country was still in financial ruins. Governments weren't communicating with each other. So perfect time to have kids. But
Right? Like what better time? I guess there's
right.
never really a perfect time to have children though,
No,
right?
no,
So,
yep. But yeah, so I came along and the doctors told my birth mom that I was born too premature and I was probably not going to make it and live a very long life. So the doctor offered for the state to take me, and my birth mom signed over her rights, and that was it because she was also, from her point of view, financially unable to have a child at this time. So um, off I went. But I was in the orphanage for almost 2 years and then adopted by two loving parents in America. I love them dearly. They're both veterinarians. They're amazing people, big hearts. Um, yeah,
did you
so
love
I got,
animals growing up? Like, did you love,
well, I
like, did you
mean,
see a lot of them and stuff
it
because
was
they're
it was
veterinarians?
it was mandatory. I mean, it wasn't going to work too well, but no, they're small animal vets now. Earlier in
Okay.
their career, they saw more kind of exotic things. My mom
Oh,
operated on like a turtle. She got
wow.
invited to the zoo to look at after like lions and stuff. It's pretty cool because
Oh,
they both worked in really big animal hospitals. So my mom was working in AMC down in New York City, so she got to see a lot of cool things.
oh,
And
wow.
actually, I just found out. She told me recently that one of her clients was actually uh, the famous Roy Cohen, the guy that was known to be kind of a gangster. Yeah, he was.
What?
She was his veterinarian.
That's so cool. She's
So
like, I
she
was on the mob payroll.
yeah, but she told stories about like when his cat was like something was off with his cat, he would call her at 3 a.m. and you better be there for his cat. But
Oh, yeah.
the difference was he took good care of her, so she got treated with nice dinners, and but that's
Oh,
not that's beside the point. But anyway, so yeah, I was adopted
that's
into.
cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. So to answer your question, yeah, no, we had pets, fish, hamster. We always had a border collie growing up, a dog, and we had two cats. And then when they passed away, we got two more cats. So always animals, and I love them. And I think I broke their heart a little bit when I told them I didn't want to follow their footsteps because they were really hoping one of their kids was gonna go after their profession and take over the family business. But
And nobody did?
no, no, that's not how it went. But maybe I'll have kids one day and they can take it over. I don't know.
There you go. There's
Yep,
always there's always some little glimmer of hope, I'm sure. So,
that's right. Yep.
okay,
So
so they adopted you when you were 2, correct?
yep, yep, right around there. And
Okay.
I was adopted to the States, and I always knew I was adopted. It was never a secret. They didn't like keep my paperwork from me or anything like that. It was always open discussion. Anytime you wanted to ask questions to the best of their ability, they could. But Russia being Russia at the time, they didn't have a lot of information, unfortunately. I had like no medical history, no medical information. A lot of the data was like falsified anyway. The
Yeah.
father's name was incorrect. It's just, it wasn't a lot of like factual things, but yeah, growing up, I never really had a problem with being adopted. It's actually kind of funny. My adoptive mother and I, we look very alike because her family history is actually from Russia and
Okay.
Germany, so we kind of look alike. So everyone thought it was their biological son that was the adopted one, and I was the biological son. So um,
Oh, that's too funny.
at least between my mom and I, my dad, he's a good old Midwestern guy from Ohio. He had the blonde hair, blue eyes, so that
So you didn't resemble
didn't
him
didn't
at
didn't
all.
resemble him a little bit, no. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's funny.
yeah, so, I grew up in, I was from Russia. It was cool. I didn't really think much of it. Usually it was my friends and peers around me that were more interested in it and thought it was cool rather than me, just because I'm
Yeah.
like, it is what it is.
It's
I
always been a part of your story, so it's kind of not new information. So you're like, yeah,
right,
like whatever.
right. Yeah, exactly. And I kind of just went with it for a while, and then toward the end of high school is when I just honestly, it was a mix of getting bored. I know that
Mhm.
sounds crazy, but I was actually getting bored. It was right before I was heading off to college, and I had a friend actually ask me like, "Hey, have you ever bothered to think that you have someone else in the world that's related to you, that's like your blood that maybe might be thinking if you're okay?" And I thought about that for a while, and that's where I'm like, if I ever had a child or something like in that circumstance, I'd want to know that they're at least safe and they're alive and they're well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So um, I decided, I'll do a search. So I just, did what everyone else did, went on Google, typed in find my birth family, Russia.
And
So
magically they appeared.
yeah, yeah. So a lot different results came up, but the top one was this gentleman named Tony Carruthers. Unfortunately, he passed away from I think cancer or something. But he was a jolly old British guy. He moved to actually my home city in Russia, Smolensk. He married a Russian woman, and go figure, he was there, and he did all these searches for Russian adoptees. So he told me, look, your birth name Novikov, it's the equivalent of Smith. So he's like, your chances are very, very slim. I hope you know that. And I was fine with that. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fine. I- 18 years of my life, 16 years of my life, I already knew this whole thing, and it wouldn't. I did at the time. I didn't think it'd bother me if nothing came back. I'd be like, well, we tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, out of a miracle, it just took the searchers over there 3 days, 3 days, and that was it. And they
Either
found,
they're really good or your family wanted to be found.
yeah. Well, I found out that the story was that they were found through the fake father's side. So they used the
Oh.
father to basically say, "Hey, look, on the birth certificate, you have a son." And they're like, "Oh, yay!" And then they're like, "Okay, so what's the information? Like, how can we get a hold of the mother's side now to, let them know too?" And they basically kind of used the father's side to get to the actual source of who I was actually
Oh,
related to. So
okay.
that's how they found them. But yeah, it was, I remember the moment and the day and time and everything, and I'll never forget it. It was like 2:15 in the morning. I was up. Don't ask. I was up really late because I'm a night owl. So, and I got an email from him, and the subject was, we saw your grandmother has been seen." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, and I clicked on the email, and it was this little short text from Tony, and he just said, "Dave, like, your grandmother was seen, a couple aunts and cousins. Here are some photos, more to come, Tony." And I'm like, "Whoa!" So I opened up the first photo, and it was my grandmother, and I was just blown away. I'm like, "Wow, that looks like me." And then there's a photo of my birth mom, and that was just like, wow, like her smile was the same, her eyes were the same. Like, this is stuff that when you're adopted, we love this because we never had the chance to see
Yeah.
what our blood looks like. And that's what, a lot of
Yeah.
people who aren't adopted, they take that for granted, of course, when they're lucky. But yeah, and then from there I found more relatives and more relatives and more relatives. It just kept going and going,
Just
and
kept
then
going. You're like, my family's
oh
getting bigger and bigger by the minute.
yeah, literally. And yeah, I found out I had two siblings I didn't know about. So I had a younger brother and sister in Russia. They never knew about me, and then now they do. And it was a really exciting time for the family to
Yeah.
be like, wow, we have someone in America. Like, that's amazing. And this was back when, the countries at least spoke to each other. So,
Yeah.
but,
Were they
but
actually maybe liked us a little bit? I don't know.
little bit,
Was
yeah.
there ever any liking happening there? Not sure.
Eh, probably tolerable maybe at best, yeah. But, yeah, no, so it was awesome finding them, and, then from there, a year later, I said, "I need to go meet them," and, my parents said, "Okay, let's go." So, we took a trip over there. It was, pretty bad timing because they were going through a lot of different things, so, of course, I
Yeah.
didn't think about that at the time. I just said, "I think I need to do this," and my parents understood. They said, it's your story, it's who you are, and if this is important to you, then it's important to us.
Yeah.
So off
Which
we
is
went.
which is awesome because I think um a lot of adoptive parents sometimes, and this could be just from my opinion, obviously it's my opinion, but sometimes they feel a little scared to kind of cross that boundary, right? Where they're meeting the birth parents and you don't
Right.
know what to expect and you're thinking, "Oh no, like what if my son doesn't want us anymore, or doesn't claim us as family once, we meet." But I'm really glad that your parents understood how important this was to you
Yeah.
and why this was so important to you. And
Yeah.
they loved you enough or they love you to be like, "Yeah, this is important to you, so it's important to us." And like, we'll just kind of take it as it comes.
Yeah, exactly. Um and you know I'm really glad that they did. And I know probably the reason behind what your thoughts about that whole process, and I agree, because the last thing the adoptive parents want is to be replaced. To have that feeling that, oh, now all of a sudden we're not your parents because you found your other side.
Yeah, like you
So
found your, quote unquote real parents, but like we
right,
did all the
right.
hard work and now, yeah, it's a
We
little
did all
we're
the
a
hard
little
work. They get the credit. Yeah, that doesn't make
exactly.
sense.
It's kind of like they're like the fun parents, right? It's like we
Yeah.
did all the discipline and the
Yep.
like, sickness and crying all the time. And then now that you're 18
So
and
yeah,
you're not doing any of that stuff anymore, then they get to have you. So I get it, but
yeah.
it's
Yep.
yeah. So
So
anyway,
we
sorry, continue.
Oh, no worries. So yeah, we went over there. It was about 14 days I was over there. But it was an unbelievable experience. I mean, it didn't really hit me as much until we were flying into Russia. That's when it kind of came on me that, wow, we're actually doing this.
Yeah.
Like we flew out of Boston down to New York. We flew out of JFK Kennedy International over to one of the airports in Moscow, and it was about a surprisingly not too long. It was only 9.5 hours. I thought it was going to be a lot longer, but
Oh
no,
yeah. I thought like maybe 16, but I'm just
yeah,
throwing
no,
in a random number.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool because the plane went up north and it went over the North Pole, like Antarctica, and you got to see the curve of the Earth, and then it went down over the
Oh.
icebergs. It was pretty cool. Yeah,
Did you try to take pictures from the really thick airplane windows they have?
I'm regretting that I didn't, and I have no idea why I didn't, but
Probably because you
I
were so in awe of it, because you don't ever see that. You don't ever
yeah,
think to yourself, "Oh, I'm
probably.
gonna see the curvature of the earth," or
Yeah, that was just something. Yeah, it was amazing to see. But so we landed in Russia. It was like 7 a.m., 6:30 in the morning, 7 a.m., and we were coming down the clouds, and that's when I looked out the window and you saw like the first view of like the outskirts of Russia. The
Mhm.
country homes and all the little villages, and then as you got closer down, you started to see the big old Soviet style buildings. And to make like the trip seem more like a Hollywood production, the weather was like gray, a little bit of rain, cold. It was just like it was perfect for a movie setting. But we were coming down and I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing?
You're like, "Can we go back? Wait, turn the plane around. I don't
Yeah.
know if I want to do this anymore."
But then we landed and got off the plane. One thing I noticed about Russians, which is pretty funny, is they don't really follow directions too well. So you know how the plane lands, the flight attendants always say, "Please stay seated until we get to the gate," and the Americans are all nice and calm and seated. Yeah, as soon as the plane touched down, all the Russians stood up, started emptying out the bins as uh,
They're
the
like,
flight
"Okay, well,
attendant was,
we took it as a light suggestion. We're just
yeah,
gonna go ahead and do whatever we
yep,
want."
yep. So yeah,
That's
so
hilarious.
we got off the plane. We had our bags. Luckily, our luggage all made it, which was good.
Yeah.
We were met at the airport by a young Russian girl who was a paralegal.
Okay.
We made contact through Tony, so he set up all the like logistics of it. So we had always a ride to get to like the hotel, and we had a local guide, and he was awesome, and we worked with the local university in my city to get an English guide. So
Oh, nice.
we had everything, pretty well planned. And I'm a big planner, so I
Yeah.
love this. I love traveling, and everything is perfect for it. It has to be perfect, or I just lose my mind. So
Yeah.
you combine that with two parents who have type A personality. Yeah, it's going to be a
Oh, so all of you guys.
oh yeah, like my parents are very schedule oriented. I mean, they're veterinarians, so appointments mattered. If you're late for an appointment, like you're done for. And like when I describe to people how strict my parents were, when we had snow days, I had a schedule of what I'm supposed to do on my snow day. I'm not even kidding. Breakfast, wake up.
No, I believe you because I have a
Yeah.
type A mother too, but I did
Yeah.
not get any of her type A
Oh yeah.
anythings.
Yep. Like literally 9 to 10, you're gonna read this book. 10 to
Oh
11,
my
you're gonna do
gosh.
math, and then you're gonna have a break for an hour, and then you're gonna go back to math. It's just like, yeah.
Oh my,
Anyway.
I mean, okay, so did you like it because you have that personality? Like, was that something that you were like, okay, I can do this, or did that irritate you as a child?
Oh, terrible. It was just annoying when I was younger and growing up, but now I thank them so much because
Yeah.
they really like disciplined me like now where I'm like very just like them in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And it's just funny because you always make fun of your parents like, oh, I can't wait till I get older. I'm never going to be like this. And then you're like, oh God, I am like you.
I know. Do you know the number of things that I do that I'm like, my mom used to sit on the phone and like pick things out of the kitchen table, like even though it was already clean. And then I'm like, I
Yep.
find myself doing that. And I'm like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, no.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a bad thing, but also I swear I would never
Yep. Yep.
do
But so we got picked up by this woman named Luba. She was a
this.
very,
Okay.
very nice woman, the paralegal, and our impression was that she was going to be with us for the day, but that didn't turn out. So she picked us up. We drove into the center of Russia, the
Okay.
capital of Moscow, right by Red Square, and
Okay.
we got out of the car. And I was a little confused because I'm like, okay, this isn't the hotel. Like, and she's like, oh, she got our suitcases out, and we're like, okay, maybe we're taking like the metro in or something.
Yeah.
So, and then she's just like, okay, she's like, welcome to Russia. I need to go to work. I'll see you later. And then she gets in her car and then drives and just leaves.
You're
So,
like, oh my gosh, what are we?
yep.
We're in a foreign country. We don't
Wow.
speak Russian. Like, what are we gonna do?
Well, it was good because since high school going into college, I was relearning Russian. So I was able to get by, which was nice. So
Yeah.
it was funny because we were all standing there, and my parents just looked at me and they're like, "You're up."
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
all right. So we have to get to like the hotel. Like looking at the map, looking at the signs in Russian. I'm like, okay, I can match it up. Like I can read the letters, so I can match it. And
Yeah.
my dad was just like, let me ask someone. And my mom and I look at each other like, oh no. And
You're like, this
of
is not
course,
gonna be pretty.
yeah, no, he found probably the oldest woman ever in Russia, probably. She was
Yeah.
looked like the typical babushka with the little scarf, the grandma who's
Oh
on the
my
side of
gosh.
the corner of the street. And he walks over and says, do you know where the Marriott on? He's trying to like look, and I'm just like, oh my God. And this woman
You're
just
like,
stared at, no.
yeah, you're like, she's not gonna know what you're saying to her right now. Like
And he's
she's
like, yeah,
confused.
he's showing the map in the like English, like Marriott, and I'm just like, oh my God, and we can't even look at him. My mom and I just turned and walked.
You're like,
Nope.
we don't know who that guy is. Like, find that guy. Like, who's that guy? Find that guy,
Oh
his people.
yeah. Oh my gosh. But so we eventually made it to the hotel, and I wanted to sleep because I was exhausted, and because
Yeah.
we've been up since. Yeah, I mean, because we flew from JFK right after Boston, so we already went from Boston to JFK. That's like an hour and a half, maybe hour 10 minutes. It's not far, but
Yeah.
so we were already up on top of like checking into the international terminal and going through security, going through passport control, probably close to 24 hours at this point, I'd say almost. And
Oh my
of
gosh.
course, to get over jet lag, you just can't go to sleep. You need to keep pushing. So my mom, again, love my parents, but what are we going to do today in Russia? well, here's a whole list what we're gonna do. Yep. So
They
we're
put an
gonna
itinerary together for you?
Sure did. Yep, absolutely. So we're gonna go, we're gonna see the Red Square. We're gonna go to this museum, and then we're gonna go out to lunch, and then after lunch we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna find a place to, yeah. So everything was
Did
planned,
you
but
start crying because you were so tired? Because that's what happens to me when I'm so tired.
I
I like just like start crying and I'm like, I can't do
I
anymore.
I, I whined a lot. I'll be honest. Like I was on the verge of throwing a fit like a child, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like I just want to sleep. My mom's like, oh no, it's gonna be fun. You're gonna thank me one day, and I'm like, probably not, mom. But I
You're like, I
obviously,
just
yeah.
want to sleep. Let me sleep.
Yeah, but it was
Oh
good
my
though,
gosh.
because we finally, yeah, we had a good first day, and then at the end of the day, we went to this restaurant. We ended up going back to it again because I loved
Uh-huh.
it so much. It was called KB 44.
Okay.
It was a cool restaurant in Russia that they served this like meat platter, which had like all these little like bites of like pork and beef and
Ooh.
sausage, and you had to dip it in like sour cream and dill and like very Russian, and it had pickles, and
Yeah.
I just loved it. Like it was amazing, and of course, because it's Russia, we pretty much can drink at any age practically in Russia.
Yeah.
They didn't declare beer. So
Like an alcoholic beverages.
beer was a soft drink since 2011 or 12.
Oh.
So kids in school could you could have it at like 10, walk around and no one would care because it's a soda. So
Stop it. Oh my gosh.
dead serious, yeah.
Oh
But
my gosh. So are
probably
kids
what
walking around the streets drunk? That might sound really like a dumb question, but like
I
what
don't
they
know. I mean, I won't put it past me. I mean, luckily the streets of Moscow though, they're very clean. The police are very strict, so you don't really
okay.
see a lot of that. But on the
Okay.
countryside, that's a different story.
Yes.
But yeah, no, but so by the time we got to dinner, I was definitely exhausted, but I was sitting there having beer, laughing at my parents in Russia. I'm just like, you know what, this is actually pretty cool,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that we're over here. I can't believe we're all, it was pretty cool. We ended up going
Well,
to the circus.
okay.
Got to see a Russian circus, and yes, they do have bears that perform, and it was just really cool. Like the whole experience was
Are
just
there
out of this.
cages like around the circus? Like, or is it just like the bear could
Nope.
just jump into the audience at any time?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That
So
seems a little stressful, but also, like you said before, it's Russia. They do things
I guess
differently.
they're used to it. Yeah. And but it was awesome. I got to meet up with so at the adoption agency we used my parents used Maps, the main placement adoption services. They're out of business now, or they're shut
Okay.
down, but they did a lot of work out of New England. They were based in Maine. Um, and the woman that was over in Russia helped facilitating all the adoptions. Her name was Zoya. She's a very nice woman, and so she took care of like all the work over in Russia. And then in the U.S., we had Mercy,
Okay.
who took care of all the work in the U.S. And Mercy
Yeah.
actually, we have lunch occasionally, and she
Oh,
lives about
fun.
like 40 minutes away from me. So it's nice, it's cool to connect with people because they get to watch you grow up kind of like your parents did. They helped with the
Yeah.
whole, yeah. So we got to meet up with Zoya in Russia, and she drove us around to like the Moscow University. We got to see where the like Olympic they had like a ski jump at the top of a mountain that looked over the whole city.
Okay.
That was cool. We went to a bunch of different monasteries and I mean, it was just incredible. The churches are beautiful. I mean, everything is just I was loving every moment over there.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And then after a couple days there, my dad actually flew home.
Okay. But he's
That's
like, I'm done with Russia. I'm good.
Yeah, well, it was a mix of a lot of different things going on. I mean, one, he wasn't a big fan of international travel, especially where they don't speak English, because it really does make
Yeah.
him anxious and just uncomfortable. And my parents were still running a business, and he felt the need he had to go back. And
Yeah.
even though he had other doctors that worked for him, but he whatever, but that's fine. At least he
Yeah.
made the trip over, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that honestly the second half when I went to my city, it was just my mom and I because that bonded us forever. Like to the
Yeah.
point where we got to experience something that's so powerful that is like unheard of. I mean, to have to be able to go back to where I was born with the woman that went there originally to get me and then to return with her all grown up. I mean, that's just it's amazing because we got to sit on the train that well, she didn't take the train, she drove by car, but um still, we got to go to the orphanage. So
Yeah.
we got to after Moscow we went to Smolensk, and we got to Smolensk,
Mhm.
and um when we got off the train, my whole family was actually there waiting for me, and
Oh,
I
okay.
I I I didn't even expect that. I mean, I should have, because they were asking me the day before, well, what time do you get in on the train? And I'm thinking, I don't know, like 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, all right. I
All
mean,
right.
I should
Yeah.
have been like, okay, yeah, duh, they're gonna probably want to meet up with me, but I didn't think they would until like later or something.
Well, because you're 18 and you're like not thinking that they're gonna make these plans, right?
Exactly, yeah, yeah. But so so when we got off the train, they were all there, and it was overwhelming, but it was awesome. All lot of hugging, a lot of crying, a lot of kissing. It was just like amazing. It was, immediately our suitcases were taken from us because Russians are very hospitable people. They will do anything for their guests. They shower you with gifts. They will just make you feel like the best. And especially if it's family, they're going to
Yeah.
even go above and beyond. So our suitcases got taken care of, and my uncle put like split up and divided everyone in different cars, and we actually had a driver waiting for us through Tony. A gentleman
Okay.
named Pavel was waiting for us, and he was confused because he had no idea that my family was going to show up too. So everyone was kind of like confused with the whole situation, but
Yeah.
I ended up in a car, and we had a local guide from the university in Smolensk. Her name was Dasha, very pretty girl. I always told her, don't worry, if things don't work out, I'll come back and marry you. But well, I don't know if she's married. Who knows? But we'll check in on that one day. That'd be cool.
I was gonna say
But
maybe you should check in on that.
maybe
You
I should
never
check in on
know.
that. Yeah.
Maybe she's been waiting for you this whole time and she's like,
Yeah.
where is he? He told me he
Yeah.
was coming.
I'll get right on that. But so yeah, so Dasha was there waiting, Pavel was waiting, and we got divided into cars, and I was in one car with my grandparents and
Okay.
Dasha, and we just took off. And my mom had no idea where I was going.
She's
She had
probably like, oh my gosh, they took my baby boy. Where do I
Yep.
go?
She had no idea. Like no one told her. Luckily, we knew the hotel. The name was the Usadba Hotel. Usadba
Okay.
Hotel for hotel. Usadba is just the name and whatever. Um,
Okay.
so it was a pretty cool hotel. Too bad we got kicked out after one day. That's another. I'll tell that story.
I was
Don't
gonna
worry.
say, what did you guys
Yep.
do?
Nope. It's good. Yeah, it's good. So I got to the hotel, and my mom was still back at the train station. She was just like, "Well, what do we do?" And the driver's just like, "We go to hotel." So we go. So she went to the hotel, and I was riding with my grandparents. And let's see, my grandfather is driving with his knee on the wheel,
Oh my gosh.
speeding, not following traffic. I mean, they don't follow traffic
Oh
laws
no.
apparently. The seatbelts didn't even have seatbelts in the car. Blasting Russian music, smoking cigarettes,
Oh my
laughing.
gosh.
And I was
That's
in the back
hilarious.
seat flying around, and I'm just like, is this normal? And Dasha just looked at me and just shrugged, and she's like, Russia. I'm like,
So
okay.
did that become your mantra the whole time? You're like, Russia.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a
Russia.
lot of other things we saw that I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Russia.
Like,
Yeah.
yep.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's
yep,
funny.
we got to the hotel, and then my aunt and her stepson, I think, yeah,
Okay.
stepson, and her husband and a couple of my cousins. We went out for a walk around the city. They showed me like the famous statues, and we went to this one. It looked like a fast food place, but it looked like a McDonald's that they converted to some other weird brand. And
Okay.
we ordered. She ordered all of us this like cranberry drink, and I'm just
Okay.
sitting there. It's like 9 in the morning, and we're sitting outside. I'm drinking this cranberry thing. I'm like, oh, this is like really good juice. And like after like, you see where this is going. After like 15 minutes, I'm like, whoa, this is what is
You're
this?
like,
This is good cranberry juice. And she's just like, yeah, it's an alcoholic drink. I'm like, what?
You're like, oh my gosh. First of all, 9 o'clock in the morning. Second of all, I thought I was feeling really good.
Yeah, but I'm like, Russia.
Russia, exactly. Oh,
they're
Russia.
all
Yeah.
doing it, so whatever. But so we saw a lot of cool sights, and we went out to lunch, and then we went back to the hotel. They wanted to come back with us. So they came back to the hotel and just kind of hung out with us, kept us company, and then they left us for a little bit, and then later they would come pick us up, and we went out to a dinner the first night. Went to this beautiful restaurant. It was outside. It was gorgeous. They had outdoor seating. They had the restaurant had a giant table waiting for us.
Oh, nice.
It was really pretty. It was under like hanging lights, and like I'm trying to think of like how you like a restaurant in America that would have a setting like this, like a really nice fancy, maybe like Italian place where the
Okay.
white tablecloth, like plants around, hanging plants. They had a waterfall. They had like a bridge over the
Oh,
water. It was really pretty.
wow.
Yeah, it was cool. And
I don't think we have any of those things in America.
probably.
I mean, maybe, but like, I don't know. Probably not though.
Yeah. But it was a really good dinner, and it was just cool. I was sitting at a table with, a lot of my relatives, minus my birth mom didn't make it there that day. I had to communicate and talk to her later during the week because she had some who knows what excuse. She's a little, little slow in the head, let's put it that way. But um she is who she is, I guess. But her husband made it out first, and he invited me to he said, "You should come back next summer." And I'm like, "Okay, why?" He's just like, "Well, in the summer we go hunting." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Yeah, we can fly around Siberia in a helicopter and shoot animals." I'm like, "Russia."
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You're like, that's not totally like
What?
hunting. You're like, I feel like that's a little disadvantage for the animals.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking at him like, "Is he serious?" And my mom's looking at me like, "What?" And I'm just like, Russia.
Russia.
Get used to it.
Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
it was a fun dinner, and then we went home. Home, geez, I hope not.
Yeah.
We went back
The
to the
hotel.
hotel that night, yeah, and we woke up the next morning, and it was like 7 a.m. It was pounding on the door, and I'm like, "What?" And I thought it was like the hotel staff or something, but I opened it up, and there's my cousins, and they're like, "Good morning," because they spoke English. They spoke not bad English. They're
Yeah.
the younger generations in Russia pretty much all learn English at this point.
Okay.
So I open them, they're like, "Good morning," and like two of my cousins just walk in and just sit on the bed and just start chatting with me. Like,
You're like, okay, we're doing this, I guess.
yep. And my
Oh my
mom was
gosh.
all, so it gets better. My mom was in the shower, uh,
Yeah.
and she had no idea that they were there. And
Oh
then
my god.
another knock on the door came. I opened it up. There's my grandparents. They're like, "Доброе
Oh my
утро,"
gosh.
good morning in Russian, right?
Yeah.
They walk in the door and just hang out, and then knock on the door again. My aunt
Oh
and
my
uncle now show up.
stop.
Yep,
Oh my
no, it's
gosh. It's
serious.
like a
Yeah,
clown car. They just like keep
they
coming out, like
they don't.
keep knocking
Yeah,
on the door.
schedules and times don't matter in Russia. Apparently, they really don't.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even bother telling them come over a certain time. They'd show up when they want. And so my uncle shows up. Uh, Again, 7:30 in the morning with a pack of beer. He's like, "Maxim," because my Russian name was Maxim. He goes, "Maxim,
Okay.
pivo, pivo, pivo," which is beer, beer. I'm like,
Oh my gosh. You're like, Russia. Oh my
Russia.
gosh. You're like, do you guys drink water here? Or is this just like, is your beer the water and
Probably
the
that's
beer the
that
soda?
hydrates them.
And
Yeah, yeah, it
yeah.
hydrates them. Yep. But
Oh my gosh.
it was
That's
it was
funny.
pretty funny. So we put that in the fridge and tried it later, and that was pretty good. But so about maybe like 8 to 9 family members and myself are in this hotel room, and then the bathroom door opens up. My mom walks out.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
she's luckily she's in her like
She's
towel and like
dressed.
dressed and stuff, but like
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
like not hair done or anything like that. Whatever. She walks out and she's just like, "Ah." They're all like,
She's
"Oh,
like,
good
I'm sorry. Did I
morning."
walk into the wrong room? Like
Yeah,
when I went in, there was
yeah,
just
yeah,
David, and now there's like
yep,
30 people.
yep. But she was like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, I guess they're all here." And I'm like, "Yep." Most of them decide just to pop by, and they're all like saying hi to her, hugging her, "Good morning." And then the family does the weirdest thing. Well, for me, it was kind of weird, but it was
Yeah.
funny to watch. They started digging through like our backpacks, and like they were
Sure.
fascinated at American stuff. Like, they wanted to
Okay.
see, like, they took out my Russian passport because I was a Russian, traveling in. Part of their laws over there, when you were born there, you have to go in as a citizen of that country. So I
Okay.
had my Russian passport and American passport. So they were looking at my American one and thought it was the coolest thing ever. They were going through, like, then they looked at my iPhone, and they just looked at like anything American they loved. Um,
Does German or does Russia not have, did they not have iPhones? Like, was that not like it had not made it
they
to the country yet? Or
No, I'm pretty sure they had iPhones in the
okay.
country. It was just a lot more expensive than what it would be in the US,
Oh, okay.
or
So
like the
maybe like
UK. So
not everybody had it over there. We're like, here, everybody
no.
has it.
Yeah,
Okay.
they had a lot of Android phones,
Oh, okay.
mostly. Yep.
Okay.
But now that's been changing. I see a lot more iPhones now, but um but yeah, so they thought everything was cool, and um then we went down for breakfast, and um just had a normal breakfast, and a lot of them had to leave for the day because between work and I think school was wait, no, it was the summer, so school wasn't going on. But my
Okay.
cousins went off, my grandparents went off because they had to go to work. Um, my uncle and aunt though took the day. They basically took the week off because they hung out with me. They were by my side. Like my aunt over there really made an impression on my mom and I. That she went out of her way to make us feel like family, like right away. She's just amazing. She sends me almost every couple weeks. I get a lot of photos sent to me on my
Oh,
phone.
cute.
We talk, and she's awesome. She's very loving, and she just wanted genuinely just to get to know me
Yeah.
because she was fascinated by this, and she wanted to share our family history with me and show us where, like, your grandmother's from, where your birth mother was born. Let's take you to the hospital that you were born at in your city.
Yeah.
Let's show you it. And so we got to see all that, and we got
So
to
is she
see.
older than your birth mom then? So is she like her older sister or?
Oh no, very young. She's only
Oh,
she was only 15 years older than me, 20 years, like very
oh,
young. She
okay.
was a lot younger. So
Okay.
she was my birth mom's sister, but
Okay.
was born way after her. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But she was just so intrigued by you and kind of the
Yeah.
story that she wanted to, which is awesome, which probably made you feel really connected and
Yeah.
clearly you
It,
guys still have a relationship. So that meant a lot to both of you.
yeah, yeah, it was really nice. And her husband, my uncle, he's a funny guy. He's a big like buff Russian guy. He looks like straight up looks like mafia 100%, but it's impolite to say that to them, but he let's just say there were a lot of things that didn't really add up when I was there with him, and
Yeah.
my
And you
mom
don't
and I.
ask questions.
No, no, you never. Yeah, rule number one in Russia: you never ask people what they do for work. And so I asked him what he does for work,
Oh no.
and what he just looked at me and smiled, and he just said, "Business." Okay, I'm
Oh,
like, "Yep,
okay.
Russia. Yep,
Yep.
business.
Yep.
Yep." But like, there's just a lot of things that didn't add up. Like, he owned like a lumber company where he like loved to go there, and he showed me around, and he like powered up the big like big saw, so like the cuts trees, and he was loving it. But um, there's a lot of people that work for him. Like my mom
Yeah.
and I got a lot of rides from people that just showed up when we asked for a ride, and no questions got asked. And so that leads
Like,
me
where do you want to
into
go?
yeah, so that leads into after the second day in Smolensk. That's when we got kicked out of our hotel. So
Okay.
one of the
This is a good
hotels,
story.
this is a good one, yeah. So we get in there and we go up to her room. My uncle and aunt are with us. We were just grabbing some things, getting ready to go to lunch, and then there's a knock on the door. It's one of the hotel staff. I open it up and they spoke English, which was nice, and they just
Yeah.
said, "We you need to leave," and I'm like, "But this room's booked for the whole time we're here. Like
Yeah.
we still have like 8 9 days here," and they're just like, "What?" And they're like, "Well, we made a mistake. It's double booked," and I'm like, "Okay, so can't you put us in another room?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "We have no availability," and I'm like, "Okay." Let's go to the front desk and we'll talk about that. So I go down there and my mom goes down with the hotel staff, and this woman behind the desk is trying to explain to us there's no rooms available when this is an old style hotel where they have all the keys behind you on every
Yeah.
room number, and there was no one in this hotel. Every key was there besides ours, and they were trying to tell me the hotel was full.
You're like,
And I'm
I
like,
can see behind you. Like, I
yeah,
think you guys are lying to me.
yeah, I'm like, there's keys back there that I'm like, well, what are all those keys? And they're like, oh, those are extras. I'm like, okay, well, your parking
Okay.
lot's empty. We haven't seen anybody here. When we had breakfast at the hotel this morning, we were the only ones there the whole time. So I'm not gonna lie. And yesterday when we got here, nobody either. So
Yeah.
I'm
Like,
like,
what's going on?
yeah. And they're like, I'm sorry, it's double booked. We don't have room for you. And I'm like, okay. And my mom and I were like, all right, I mean, luckily there were other hotels in the area, but my mom and I
Yeah.
kind of looked at each other and I'm like, let's just go tell my family and maybe they will come up with something. So we go upstairs and I tell my cousin, I'm like, yeah, we're getting kicked out. And he turns and looks at his dad, my uncle, and they start talking in Russian quickly. And then my uncle just says, I'll have a talk. So he goes downstairs with this four like Russian girls, probably like 20 years old, 19 years old,
Yeah.
and she just starts getting like screamed at pretty much in Russian by this big guy who's
Oh my
just
gosh.
like threatening all this stuff and whatever. So then he comes up after about 10 minutes and basically he's like, "Yep, they don't like Americans, so they
Oh.
they basically had a thing against it because we're from the U.S. And
But you're like, we have Russian family, like they're right here.
yeah,
Like,
which is funny
shouldn't we be
because
Russian by proxy or something?
yeah, yeah,
You're
which is
like,
funny
I'm
because
Russian though. I was born here. You're like, I
yeah,
am a Russian.
it's funny because when you have to check in Russia, you use your passport, and they copy your passport a few times. So what they
Okay.
do is they take Russia's very like security focused all the time.
Yeah.
So like our rooms were probably bugged, and that's not even kidding. Like
Are you
that's just
serious?
I'm almost positive. Usually, I mean, anything, especially Americans coming to a random city in Russia, yeah, they're probably going to be suspicious about that. But when
Well,
you're
I mean, I
there,
guess we have like Alexa and Siri that probably like
oh,
does
they
the
listen
same
to,
for us here,
yeah,
right?
exactly. But yeah, no, when you check into a hotel, they take your passport and they copy it a few times. They keep one copy there at their hotel. They ship another copy to the Ministry of not Foreign Affairs, but I think the Ministry of Internal Affairs, basically the official government letting them know that you're here at this hotel. And they also ship a copy of your passport to the local police in the city to know
Oh,
that
just
they
in
know that.
case.
There you go. So,
So they
so
have your face so they can see you. Like, that's the American. Let's keep an eye
yeah,
on them.
pretty much. Yeah. And so anyway, so my uncle said, okay, so, you know, we need to find somewhere else, but don't worry. The hotel here is already paying another hotel to put you up in a room. All the like logistics have been done and planned. Just pack up. We go to the new hotel, and then we go out and have fun. I'm like,
Oh my
okay.
gosh, that's so
So
funny.
so we literally just get in these cars, drive to another hotel, and it's literally called Hotel Smolensk. And on the outside, it was the same hotel my mom stayed at when she came and got me. So she's like, "Oh no, not this hotel." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Well," she's like, "I haven't been here since I came in the middle of winter to come get you." So it was freezing cold in the 90s because the heat didn't work. She was like, I
Okay.
was under like 9 blankets and still freezing. They had no food, and she's like listing all these
Oh
things
my God.
as we're driving there. I'm like,
So she's
Mom,
like,
you're not.
I have PTSD. I can't stay at this hotel. Please don't make me stay at this hotel. Anywhere
Yeah,
else, I'll stay.
yeah. But it luckily upgraded since then. So we got
Oh,
there.
good.
They were very nice to us. We had a nice room and didn't get kicked out, so we were fine. But
So, but I'm confused. Like, so do all Russians hate Americans, or was it just that hotel that you were first staying in that hated it? Because, like, if they were going to pay for the other hotel, then what is the difference between
see,
those two places?
and it's weird because most Russians, they don't hate Americans. It's just the governments that just don't get along. And
Okay.
I just think there was someone in that city that just didn't like the situation because at the time we were traveling,
Yeah.
Russia invaded Crimea. That's when the whole conflict started with Ukraine. And in
Okay.
response, Russia was getting heavily sanctioned by the US. So we
Oh,
traveled at a pretty bad time as Americans to say, hey, we're going to come to your country and take advantage of you because your
yes.
economy is in the toilet because of us.
Yeah. Like, you're welcome. And we're going to
You're
come and walk
welcome.
all over it and show you, like, and wave while we
Basically,
do it. Oh my gosh.
basically, yeah, yeah.
Well, and because you had said before that, when adoptions in Russians didn't like babies going to America because they thought that we were like dismantling them
That's
and
right.
killing them, correct? Is that,
That's
and
right.
that's kind of where I wonder where
Yeah,
that folk tale started.
probably from the government. I'm pretty sure they were very because I know when Putin came into power, he was very pro-Russia, like very everything Russia focused. Like our children that are in orphanages need to be adopted by Russians first, and
Okay.
they passed a lot of laws that even during the adoption process could be cut and stopped internationally at any time. If a Russian family came up and said, "Oh, I'll adopt that child," they'd say, "Oh, great," and they'd take the child away and give him to the Russians instead. So
Okay.
there's
Even after the like, let's say the Americans, like, let's say your parents adopted you, and then somebody in Russia said, "Oh no, just kidding, I want to adopt." Would they take you away from your parents, or once that adoption has been finalized and you are in America, they don't do that? Or do
yeah,
you know
no.
that answer?
Once you're in the U.S. and everything, it's totally
It's
different.
done.
But
Okay.
if you were still at the orphanage and not out of the country yet,
Okay.
you
Then
could
yes.
still,
Okay.
yeah. That was a big scare, yeah, a big scare for my mom at the time because
Oh,
these
for
laws were
sure.
changing constantly. So she had to get in and get out with me as quick as possible, and she did. Knowing her, she got the job done in 5
She
days
had an
somehow.
itinerary.
Literally 5 days, the quickest ever. She
She's
got
like,
in
I
and
come
out.
in at 8 o'clock. I pick them up at 9 o'clock. We
Yep.
get all the paperwork signed by 10 o'clock, and then we're gone by noon.
We're out
I
of
mean,
here.
I'm
Yep.
sure it was a few more days than that, but
Yeah, but she was efficient. But
oh
yeah,
my gosh.
so yeah, in Smolensk, we the following days we took trips around and outside the city. I got to meet a bunch of relatives that were like nuns that I didn't even know about that I had related to me. So we got to go to these cool
Okay.
like monasteries and these churches where they made us like homemade bread, and they had cows and like
Ooh.
fresh milk, and it was just really cool. Like and it was funny because it was kind of humorous because at one point they asked like, the nuns asking me like, okay, so how often do you go to church? And I just sat there. I'm like, I looked
You're
at my
like,
mom. I looked at my mom. I'm like, you want to take this one, mom? And
you're like, I'm too young to answer this question. You're like, you're gonna have to defer to my mother on that one.
I'm like, when I was younger, for preschool and kindergarten, I was actually in a church-led school for a couple years, and then
Okay.
when I went elementary school, I went to the public school, through the
Yeah.
rest of the learning experience in my town.
Yeah.
But we went to church only for the holidays, really. That's it. So, and it was for the music.
Yeah.
So, we basically just said, yeah, we go occasionally. That's pretty much the answer we gave, and
Yeah.
they were satisfied with that. So,
Yeah. Well, that's good.
yeah, but so we did that. We went to a grocery store in Russia, it was like a Costco size, like Sam's
Okay.
Club size store, and it was just really cool just seeing all the items in Russia. They had plenty of stuff. They had plenty of American goods, imported goods. They had plenty of like food. They had plenty of the country was doing well. It wasn't as bad as well it is now, but
Yeah.
it was fine. Like a lot of the rumors circulating were just not true, and we were there and saw it. Um, but I'd say one of the most memorable nights there in my city, 2 nights actually. One was the night with my grandmother at her place. So I got to go to my
Okay.
grandparents' house at her home and see like where she, like lived for the last how many years she was there. And got to have a family dinner and homemade food and cooked. And we got to go outside, walk around her garden, and just try fresh vegetables she was growing. And it was really cool. Like it was like, I felt very comfortable, and the whole time I honestly felt very comfortable with my family. It's a weird feeling because you're sitting there and you're related to all these people and they look like you, and it was a warm feeling. It was no negative feelings, nothing crazy. They were skeptical about my mother for a bit because
Yeah.
this is the woman that came and basically took me away from them. So they wanted to make sure that it wasn't just an act. Like I really was healthy. I really did have a good childhood, and that eventually the grandmother and the older relatives warmed up to my mom.
Yeah.
But everyone loved her. She was great. But we all got along great, and that night was awesome. And then the last night in Smolensk was when I finally, because I didn't really talk much to my adoptive mom in terms of like emotions or anything during
Yeah.
it, because we were always on the go, and it was just, and she was very good with just letting me process things on my own and um, figure things out. And she basically said, if you don't, this is your trip. I'll be here if you need me. If you don't, that's fine. Just let me know if you need anything. So at the last night we were there, we were outside, we were having good old Russian borscht and having beers and sitting there watching the train station. I looked at my mom and I said, I'm ready to go home. And she just started crying. She's like, thank God.
She's like, get me out of here. Also, thank you for coming with me.
Yep. So the next day we left, went back to Moscow. I kept it together all the way until the train ride. So we got on the train and we were waving goodbye. And as soon as the train inched 1 foot forward, I just bawled. I just lost it. I started bawling my eyes out. And the two other Russians in our little compartment were just staring at me with the most horrendous looks on their face. They
They
were
weren't
like, "What?"
concerned. They were more like, what's
They were
wrong
like,
with
"What
this
is
kid?
wrong with you?" Yeah, like
Oh my
compose
gosh.
yourself. Like this
We
is
don't
Russia.
we don't do that in Russia. We don't cry in Russia.
We cry in private, not in
Yeah,
public. What's
exactly.
wrong with you?
We don't let
Yeah.
other people see your emotions. Jeez. Yeah, you definitely aren't Russian.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, so we got back and had another day or two in Moscow to kind of relax and just take everything in. And we went to a park and had ice cream. We went shopping in the Red Square, and the whole thing was just amazing. Like, it felt unreal looking back at all of
Yeah.
it, and so much happened, and it was just incredible. But
Did you
yeah.
feel like you didn't realize how much emotions you had until like that last day because you were so busy doing all the things and you felt so comfortable? Did it just all of a sudden hit you just like this overwhelming? And was it like sadness? Was it happiness that you were able to like connect the dots? Was it like what explain your emotions kind of as you
Yeah.
were getting ready to leave and being just and then spending those couple days with your mom in Moscow, like the difference between the first days you were there and then, where your emotional state was, I
Yeah,
guess.
so getting to Russia with everyone in the capital in Moscow, walking around, it was more of like, hey, I'm a tourist, this is cool feeling of, hey, I made it back. This is cool. Let's go out to eat, take photos, let's go to the circus. I didn't dive into the whole family side until we got to Smolensk, but after Smolensk and taking the time to get to know everyone and the dinners and then trying to go back, and I was blogging at the time and I was trying to keep every day up to date, and after like day 4 I didn't have the energy. I'm like, I can't even type anymore. Like, this is just too much. And
Like it's emotionally draining.
it was like I was exhausted every day, and I said, I can't, like, I told myself that I can't stop and spend a lot of time dwelling on anything right now because there's too much on the agenda to get through. And if
Yeah.
we don't, like, I'm going to regret it probably one day. Or, if I said, oh, I'm not, oh, I'm going to skip tomorrow's lunch and dinner with my family because I didn't need to, sleep all day in the hotel. And now I couldn't do
Yeah.
that. So, because that's precious time.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know when I'm going to make it over there next, to be honest. But um, at the time though. So, I had to keep going, and I was taking in all these people I was meeting, and then I got to meet some members of my father's side, my father's mother. I got to meet. I got to speak to my birth father on the phone and hear his voice and talk to him, and um, it was just, it was incredible. And then um, it's just all that at the very end, like
Just kind of hit
every
you.
yeah, like at the very end, like when it really like came to me that this actually happened, I did all this, and it's real. And this isn't like a made up like fairy tale. It was
Yeah.
definitely on the train when I was leaving my family with that feeling of, I was very happy, I was extremely pleased, and sad because the reality was I didn't know when I was going to get over there again. And
Yeah.
that was, and I family to me is really important. I take that very seriously in the U.S. You know, I live 30 minutes from my parents, and I live 15 minutes from my brother and his wife, and that's like that's the main family we have around here because all the other relatives are spread out around the country. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. And but yeah, and years later, actually connected with um, my birth mom's cousin, who
Okay.
happens to live in the United States, which is
Uh,
amazing. She's down in
Yeah.
Florida, and she came over a long time ago and speaks perfect English, and we talk all the time and
Oh, that's
FaceTime,
amazing.
and it's incredible. Like, to have a relative in the United States that I can go visit and talk to, and who's related to me. It's
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel that connection to her in the sense of like you didn't grow up with her, but you have this unspoken just connection that has bonded you guys because you're blood? Like,
Yeah, yeah, it's like that feeling where instantly your family, and in Russia, family is like everything. It's
yeah,
taken very seriously. So when you're family, you are instantly connected. You tell them everything, your life story, every problem, and it's no joke. Like, even the first day and like the first night that I actually spoke to her on the phone, she wanted to know everything. She wanted to know where I was living, what I do for what I do for work. Am I dating anyone? Am I married? Am I gonna get married? Am I gonna have kids? Like they want to know
yeah.
everything.
You're like, well, actually, there's this girl in Russia that I'm going to go back and try to find because she's so pretty,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
promised that I'd come back and marry her.
Yeah. 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 It's grown. Yeah. Dasha, I'm coming for you
Dasha,
in
Dasha,
a
if
good
you're
way.
listening to this, Dave's on his way.
That's right. No, but yeah, so it was just, it's like it's that instant kind of trust feeling, and you know, it's nice and it's cool. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a part of me. You know, and it's not that I have to reassure my adoptive parents that, you know,
Yeah.
you guys are still my parents. You're more important, you know,
Yeah.
in ways like that. And they get it, you know, they know, they understand. And it's always nice because occasionally I'll talk to my birth mother, maybe like once or twice a year on the phone, or we'll video
Uh-huh.
chat. And the last time we had a video chat, it was last April, just randomly out of the blue. She called me 7 times in a row and I didn't answer. I'm
Oh.
like, okay, wow. I was working and I'm like,
Yeah, you're like,
okay.
something's going on.
I'm like, all right, I'll call her back. And it's like I said, she's a little special in some ways, but we love her for it. She was called me because this was serious. Like she was very, very mad and she needed to get this out. She called me and she's like, I'm really upset because there's a new rule, there's a new law for our building that we can't smoke inside anymore. And I'm really, really mad about that. And I'm like, okay, well,
She's like, I needed to call and tell you that.
she's like,
And I
that
had to call you
literally,
7 times.
she's like, so we can't smoke inside anymore. And now I have to go outside. And then, and then best part, she's sitting inside and then she just lights up a cigarette, starts smoking
Oh my
inside.
gosh. Of
And I'm
course,
just
because
like,
it's Russia.
Russia, we know.
Russia.
but,
Yeah.
but it was 3.5 hours long. This call was, and she wanted
About
to talk
smoking
about,
outside versus inside.
it was that for a while, and then she had to show me her house and show me her husband lying in bed, which was really weird. I didn't want to really see that,
You're
but
like,
whatever.
I can't unsee that.
Yep. Oh well. But he was friendly. I don't know, whatever.
That's
And
funny.
she wanted to talk about my life. She wanted to say how she wanted to make sure I was happy. And then she started getting emotional and crying and saying, oh, well, you know, I'm your mother. And she started getting kind of like aggressive. And I'm like, all right, like this is getting weird. Like you like I think she was probably drunk or something, honestly,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
her
And
mental
you're like,
state
also, mom,
sometimes.
I'm like, I'm at work right now. So can we maybe continue this conversation when you're
I
sober?
yeah. Yeah, but eventually I got the call and then I had a throbbing headache. Like that just drained me.
Yeah.
I ended up taking a nap after that, but right before I took my nap, I called my mom, my adopted mom, and I'm like, "Mom, thank God you're my mom." I'm like, "I just got off the phone with my birth mom. She's mental. Like absolutely bat, you know, out of her mind crazy." And my mom would start laughing and I'm like, "Thank you for being sane." And she's like, "Thank you for that, David. You know, I try to do some things right." I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're I'm like,
Exactly.
oh, but yeah, I mean, but
I
you
mean,
know,
does that just solidify to you too that the decision for your adoption was like meant to be, you were meant to be with the parents that you have, and that you just had such a wonderful life and wonderful opportunities because of the choice that to
yeah,
place you?
100%. I mean, looking back on it, like it was amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
everything I've learned and how I was raised, and I give so much credit to my parents. They did an amazing job, and you know, through my podcast, you know, just like you, how you interview a lot of people, I interview a lot of adoptees as well, and you just hear some of these stories that just they just upset me. It's just
Yeah.
parents that want to adopt a child and then like not even want to like really be in their life or raise them properly, or I don't know. It's just you hear all these stories and it's sad and it saddens me.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you wish you could take all of them and like be like, come be with my parents. Like my parents are great parents, and you hate hearing the bad stories and
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I feel that way about birth mothers. I hate hearing the birth mothers who are like, I've been shut out of their lives. It was supposed to be open and now it's closed and they're not responding. Like, and it just breaks my heart because I'm like, this is a huge tapestry of people, right? And we need
yeah,
to make sure that everybody's included in, I mean, of course, situations and people, like you said with your birth mom, you're like, she's a little unstable. So I
yeah,
don't maybe want a lot of her in my life, which you
yep,
have that right 100% to set those boundaries. But just to give everyone the opportunity and space to, either grieve or work through that or have like this bigger community. Because
yeah,
big community of people, bigger family, like that's not a bad thing unless it's detrimental to you and your
right,
mental health, then of
right,
course. But
right,
but yeah, I get what you're saying. It just
yeah,
breaks your heart when you hear these like terrible stories.
yeah, yeah,
which is,
Yeah.
I'm sure, is why you're such a huge advocate of adoption because of your positive experience.
Yeah, I am, and I will say it's sometimes fighting an uphill battle, um, because I have a positive experience. Because there are so many out there that don't have a positive experience, that I feel sometimes like I should be more like quiet about it, because I honestly don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
I'm not out there to like rub it in people's faces. I'm just sharing my experience. Like, I had a
Yeah.
positive experience, and that's why I view it in a positive way. But of course, people who didn't have a positive experience, they're not going to view it and that's just
Yeah.
that's human nature. And
Yeah.
I understand that, but um I am an advocate for it, because I think that there are people who adopt that really do care and want to make a difference in that child's life. And
Yes.
I mean, talking to my mom about it, I actually interviewed my mother on my podcast, and we spent an hour and a half, and it was so cool to have her voice. And that's special right there, to hear her words and talk about why she got into adoption, her life story a little bit. And
Had you
you
ever
know
heard that before? Like, had
I
she ever shared that with you before the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, she's
Okay.
talked about it before, but the difference is that, one, I got to remember everything, because now it's it's in like an audio format and video format, so
Yeah.
it's easier. And she did keep a journal. I remember
Okay.
over there, but her writing's both my parents, well, my dad's writing is a little better. I mean, the whole joke about doctors and writing scripts, how it just turns into scribbles eventually.
Yeah.
My mom has really impressive like cursive, and it's like it's more like old school cursive, so like it's kind
Uh-huh.
of hard to read sometimes. So I'm like, thank you for coming on and talking to me.
Yeah, exactly. Thank
But
you. So I can fill in the gaps of maybe like, what was she trying to say here or
yeah,
there? Or,
exactly.
well, so what advice do you give to people who maybe give you negative feedback where they're like, well, you had a great experience and I didn't? Or like, so what would your response be to somebody who maybe had a bad experience and is almost wanting to fight you? Cause I do feel like sometimes, especially when this is such a, adoption is such a sensitive subject for a lot
Yeah.
of people. So you
Yes.
do have to kind of handle it carefully. So what would your response be to someone who just kind of maybe wants to fight with you or tell you that you're wrong
I
about
can.
adoption?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I'll say, I understand where you're coming from. I reassure them all the time. Look, I'm not here to cause problems. I'm not here to fight with you, or we can disagree with each other. And my belief is that you are still better off in some ways. I mean, maybe you didn't have the perfect life that you wanted after you were adopted, but think about if you weren't adopted. Do you think your life might have been different? I mean, there are things you don't know and you can't control that, but what you can control is what you're doing now. So
Yep.
if your adoption really bothered you that much, then you can work on that. But you don't have to dwell on it for the rest of your life. That
Yeah.
you have the power to overcome that, and whether it's through talking to adoptees or friends about it, or specialists about it, however avenue you want to go, there's always people and resources out there to help. And I'm open to talk to people even if they had negative experience, because
Yeah.
I believe in the power of you know voice, and the power of your story. And um, even if we could, to come together on both sides is like, that's what's ideal. You take in the
Yeah.
bad experiences, put them with the good experiences, and then you can come together and work on a solution. Think about, okay, these adoptions were bad in the US because XYZ. Let's do something about it in this generation where we can put
Yeah. Like, how
people in
can we change
positions.
that?
Yeah, exactly. And because if we don't have people sharing these bad experiences, we don't even know it's happening. So
Right.
I mean, to be fair, when I grew up in New Hampshire, I knew a few people adopted, and they all had success stories like me. So my view on it for a long time when I was younger, and like middle school and high school age, I said, oh, if you're adopted, I guess you have a good life, because I'd never met someone with a bad life until I went
Yeah.
to college, and then I heard some pretty awful stories. I'm just like, whoa, okay, So, but fast forward, you know, 10 years later, here I am, and I'm still going and listening to people's stories. And I talk to a lot of adoptees a lot. I've been to conferences, and um, I just love connecting with them. And like you
Yeah.
said, you made a good point by saying adoptees, And adoption is such a sensitive topic, but it's also an emotional topic. So you talk to someone and you find someone who's adopted, immediately you feel connected with them on some level that
Yep.
is different. And I've definitely experienced that. You know, if it's a stranger on a train and you're, I don't know, in New York City and you're talking and they're like, oh yeah, I was at a event today about adoption because I was adopted from China or Vietnam, or they'd be like, oh wow, I'm adopted from Russia. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, yeah. Let's share stories later. Here's my number. Boom. It's like
Yeah.
most of us are very open about it, and
Yeah.
um, I get I get people that they may not like to hear a lot of positive stories if they really had a bad experience, and I get that. And I mean, at the end of the day, they have the power themselves to not listen to those positive stories if they don't want to. If it really hurts them
Right.
that much, you can avoid it if you want. But, I mean, like I said, there's always ways to look at it from different angles. And, you know, y- if you don't want to talk about adoption, you can work on not, thinking about it as much. You can try to
Yeah.
dwell on other things that are more important in your life, what you can do now and then moving forward. Maybe if you want to have your own children and you want to love them in a way that was not the way that you were treated. You can
Yeah.
use that outlet to do things right and then make you maybe heal a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I do think that sometimes people do like to dwell on things that are out of their control because it's a little easier to be angry about it.
Yeah,
Because you can't go back and say, oh, well, like my life would have been so much better if I wasn't adopted. Because you don't know that. And then it would
exactly.
also change all of your life experiences and like who you are. And I've had people ask me, like, oh, would you have done, would you do that over? Do you think you'd make that same decision to place your child? And I said, I 100% would, because who I am today, I really like that person who I am today. And I
Yeah,
went through a lot of hardship to get to where I am, and I'm not perfect. I still have healing to do, you know, but I think when you play that game of coulda, shoulda, woulda,
yeah,
then you do end up living in a place of negativity because you're always wanting to know if there's going to be something better.
yeah, yeah.
And
I agree.
that's unfair to yourself, really. I mean, it's unfair to you to live in that space. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying you can't people can't grieve, or they don't, they can't have bad experiences, because I believe that there are those really awful experiences out there, of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
Um, but hopefully we can, like you said, we can all share our stories and we can find like a common ground of a really good back and forth and a good conversation, because conversations can change the
yep.
future.
That's right.
And like you said too, like when you have those bad experiences, well, let's talk about those bad experiences, because maybe there's a common denominator, and then we can take that common denominator and try to change it,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we don't know what you don't know, right?
Right, right. There's a quote that I love, that I tell people. I used to actually have this quote on my wall, but I need to put it back up there. It was from former Secretary of Defense Don Rumsfeld. He had a famous quote, his line about the unknown knowns. He would say that there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, there are unknown unknowns, but there are also unknown knowns. Meaning to say from the beginning, there are known knowns, we know what we know. There are
Yeah.
unknown unknowns, we don't know what we don't know. There are unknown knowns. We don't know, but we think there are things out there. And there are also known unknowns. We know what we don't know. So there's always a way that you can tie it together and say, like, we don't know it because we don't know.
Yeah,
Every
exactly.
situation you can relate to. I just like that quote because it's like your brain's powerful. You have the ability to think and um, go beyond circumstances and maybe try to come up with a scenario that is better than what you had, or you have the ability to try to see something in a positive manner, or understand that it was a bad experience, but here are some things we can work and try to learn from it, and learning from mistakes and not repeating history, because
Yeah. Yeah.
history, as
I
we know,
love that.
repeats itself if you don't
Yeah.
change it. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, I actually love that quote. I'll have to look it up because my brain is like the unknown unknown. Like I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but it makes
You're
sense. But also I'm
yeah.
like, Okay, wait a minute. But what are your plans? Like, do you have any plans for your podcast? Like, what are you hoping to achieve with this? Just to have the conversation? Just so people, like, people's stories are out there and we can really, have this conversation about adoption and the good, bad,
Yeah,
and the ugly?
pretty much. I mean, right now we've been focusing primarily on just getting people's stories out there, hearing their journeys, hearing the positives and the negatives. I do the interviews during the week, and then on the weekends we have our other host, Kat, who she conducts on the weekends, and she's more in depth on the psychology side because
Okay.
she did some, I think, did some courses or has a degree or something in college from psychology on top of her language and other skills. But
Okay.
she definitely dives in deep and talks about like like let's talk about this bad experience and figure out like where it stemmed from or so she's already taken that deeper dive.
Yeah.
And eventually, and, I have no problem doing that either. It's just my first thing is let's get your story down, and then if you want to revisit it, and we can go like have a follow up in a couple months, then we can really
Yeah.
dive into some specific points you want. And I think right now it's just trying to build up the audience and get the people, get the following, and then
Yeah.
from there, my hope is that we know enough people who are running adoption organizations, running podcasts, where if we came together and had multiple people come together and plan like a conference or something, that'd be amazing. I've attended conferences before, and I think we could pull it off. And
Oh,
if you
yeah.
get enough people that are adopted and enough adoption professionals and people who want to do things like run for public office, like I want to run for public office in the next coming years. I plan to run in my state. And if we want to change adoption laws and change adoption policy, well, let's do it. Let's stop sitting around and talk about it. Like,
Yes.
let's get out there and do it. So, that's something that, we can do. So,
Oh my gosh, if you run for and yeah, like let let me know because I'm like, yeah, let's change those laws. There's a lot there's a lot of things
yeah,
that I think need to change personally. And I don't even know if this is a possibility, but I'm like, I would love that nationally all the laws would be the same. As far as like, because we've worked with so many different states, it's like where the baby's conceived and then where the baby's adopted and then where there's adoptive
right,
family. It's like you have this,
right.
the relinquishment rights of like, okay, well, 48 hours in this state and then this has to happen in this state. This has to happen. It's like, it would be so great if all the states across the country, it's like, okay, so you have 48 hours. This is the relinquishment. This is this, because trying to work with some states is such a nightmare and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
should not be that
I
hard.
agree. Yeah, the laws, the fact that you can have different adoption laws in different states, it's just amazes me how, you could have a birth mom be like, well, if I had my child, just a couple states up north, I could, get this benefit out of it and not be penalized or something. It's
I
just,
know. And that's where there's that gray area, right? So it's like you
yeah,
want, like you're thinking, okay, on this spectrum up here, okay, let's do this. But then, like you just said, and Heidi just said to me too, some states are trying to require it that the birth moms can't leave the state. Like if they're going to adopt, they have to stay in the state that they're going to be and place there. They can't go elsewhere, which I think is so dumb
yeah, that
because
doesn't make sense.
California. Oh my gosh. See, she just said California just passed it and I conceived my baby in California. So that means I would have been affected by that, which the birth father probably wouldn't have signed. And then what? Like, and then where are you? And I'm like, that's not fair.
Yeah,
That's, oh,
that's
that's irritated.
ridiculous.
Like now I'm
That is.
irritated.
Yeah, well, that does make sense because it's like, okay, well, if you're going to have that much restriction, why is the United States allowing international adoption then?
Right?
You're going to
Like
have the
if you're,
birth moms in the U.S. stay in that state. What are you going to do? Fly half the people in Russia and all these other countries into Russia? I'm sorry, into the United States because the birth mom needs to be there.
I'm just confused at who is making these laws because the people making these laws have either never experienced adoption. They've never known a birth mother. They've never, they're money. It's all about money. And that part of adoption is where it's hard is the people who are making the laws sometimes are they just want the money.
Yeah.
And it's
Or
not,
it's political somehow, and
yes,
it's unfair. Children should never be put in
no,
that
it should
position
never
where
be political,
no, it
ever.
shouldn't. It's yeah, it's sickening. And I've been down to DC a few times and talked to senators, and there's a coalition of adoption advocates down there. I think it's called literally the National Coalition of Adoption, maybe. I'll have to check on the
Okay.
name, but
Yeah.
they're a good group of like congressmen and women and senators that are adopted themselves or have adopted or um, support adoption, and they try to look at the laws. And unfortunately, the reality is, adoption is not one of the most popular things that is on the agenda
Yeah.
pretty
I
much
know.
ever. But
I know.
if you just slide adoption laws into another bill, I mean, put it under like, I don't know, the Better Children's of America Act. Boom. Look at that name. That
Right.
sounds good. I
Yeah.
mean,
There you go.
just slide some stuff in there, and just, I know, unfortunately change is hard, as we know, and
Yeah. Oh,
especially in
totally.
this political climate. Good luck. But I mean, we have to do something because it's the younger generation that's stepping up to take over. And I've always said, I want to make it I want to make the adoption process easier, better, less stressful, but make sense.
Yeah.
Let's just talk to the professionals. Let's talk about the mental health side of things. How is this going to affect this child? How's it going to affect the birth mother? Like, we need to take that into account. Like, a lot of the adoption laws that came from the 40s, 50s, 60s, like, things have
Yeah.
changed in the last almost 100 years. Like, we need to update these. I mean, things are different between social media, between access to files and data, privacy laws change. I mean, there's just so much, but there's so much you can do, and we need to do it, because if no one else is doing it, then we're just going to continue for another 100 years of discussions. And
Okay,
don't
well,
get me
I'm
wrong.
joining your team. We're
Okay.
joining your team. So like there's three of us now. So, and then you find more people, we'll find more people, and sooner or later we'll get it all
No,
taken care of,
I'm
hopefully.
serious.
No, I am too.
Yeah, we should seriously start, whether it's a nonprofit or like a political advocacy or something. Just get a bunch of adoption professionals and leaders together where we have a voice, and we can make it known. Be like, look, there are so many people who are adopted. I know at least 60,000, 50,000 Russian adoptees in the United States alone during the
Yeah.
years that I was adopted.
Yeah.
And you put that on top of domestic adoptions, foster care, and then other countries. It's a large percentage, probably. We can look up the statistics, but yeah, no, I'm all for it. But
Yeah.
I
I'm like,
think,
let's do conferences. Like I'm all about it. I'm like all pumped about it. So, cause
yeah,
I told my husband, I said, I mean, he said this to me too, cause I haven't been home a lot lately, just with running, like with having birth mothers that I've been helping, and then, some other things like that. And I'm never home. And he's like, but
yeah,
honestly, I've never seen you happier.
yeah,
And I said, because I mean, yes, I am a mother and I love my children. I do. I love them fiercely. But I'm like, I feel like this is my purpose. Like, I feel like
yeah,
I was put on this earth and I'm so passionate about this that I just don't understand why other people don't feel the same. But I also
yeah,
think that that's
exactly.
what causes change, is that you have to be so convicted
Yeah,
in your belief system about something in order to get change to happen,
yeah, yeah. I agree
and
100%.
willing to do whatever it takes to make change happen. And I am
Yep,
150% feel that way, which I know that you are too.
yep,
And I know that Heidi is, and all the people at the agency, I know there's lots of people who feel the same. So
yeah. Yeah,
let's do it.
I started a couple months ago, like reaching out to people and kind of getting a census of like what people are doing and how they feel. So I already have a list of people that are willing to step up. So I think it's time
Awesome.
to set up a meeting pretty soon. Let's start talking and seeing what we can do.
That's amazing. Yeah, you'll have to keep us in that loop, because we would
Yeah,
love to be a part of that.
absolutely.
So,
You bet.
and okay, David, thank you so much for being so kind to us about all this
Oh,
kerfuffles.
it's okay. It's my inner IT understanding right there. So,
Thank you.
yep,
And honestly, I'm like, we're just meant to talk a lot and to just get comfortable with each other, because we'll probably be in each other's lives for a long time. So it's
yep,
just the
yep.
a beginning of a beautiful friendship.
That's right. Yep, yep.
So thank you so much for being on our podcast. And if anybody out there is pregnant or knows someone who's pregnant, please reach out to us at activeloveadoptions.com. We'd love to be a part of your story. Thank you so much.